Welcome to the VP Marketing Show, a podcast that takes you deep inside high-performing marketing teams to learn what they do, how they do it, and how they get better every day. We cover strategy and execution, brand and demand, metrics and team structure, today's realities, and tomorrow's opportunities. If you lead a marketing team, you aspire to the top job, or you're a CEO who hires and manages a VP marketing, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the VP Marketing Show. I'm your host, Steve Watt, and today's guest is Michael McCunney, VP Marketing at Revenue Analytics. We had a lot to talk about. Michael has grown that marketing team from just him to 8 people in under 6 months. We explore what he looks for when he's recruiting and how he structured a marketing team from the ground up. We get into the recent pivot of the business model to much more SaaS and less bespoke service provision. We discuss the essential role marketing plays in pipeline acceleration, especially when deals are large and complex and sales cycles are long. We get into buyer enablement, brand, career advice for up-and-coming marketers, and more. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. Please welcome Michael McCunney, VP Marketing at Revenue Analytics in Atlanta. Michael, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Steve, an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Revenue Analytics.
Absolutely. So Revenue Analytics, we help big companies make big pricing decisions. So what does that really mean? It means that we really help companies in very specific industries price things better and faster. That usually results in a much better customer experience and eliminates lots of, unfortunately, built up red tape over time.
And you work with a lot of different industries, correct?
Media, hospitality, passenger rail, the consumer and industrial products title, which I still just hate because it really doesn't mean anything, but that whole big gigantic segment, as well as cruise. And so we actually do a fair amount of business in cruise, hospitality, and media, where we have a really large market share, but our best areas of opportunity are actually in that consumer and industrial products category.
How big a company is Revenue Analytics, and how big is your marketing team?
We are just about 30 million, and our marketing team is now, I can say, happily up to 8. Well, actually, we have 7 with 1 open head as of now, but hopefully that'll be closed soon.
And there's been a lot of growth in that marketing team since you joined, a little over a year ago?
That's right. Just over a year ago, and was a one-man band for quite a bit of time, but have an incredible team that I can't tell you how fortunate I feel that we've assembled this level of talent on the team that have all been very, very recent additions.
So you've gone from just you to 8 in not much more than a year. That's a very significant change. What changed with the is this a recent embracing of the importance of marketing, or had there been a lot of turnover prior to you, or how do you find yourself going from 1 marketer to 8 in a year?
Yeah, and it was like more like 6 months or less than that for the ads, which makes it that much more crazy. But the reason for the investment in marketing was our chairman looked and said, our model just isn't scalable for what we're doing today. And we have to pivot our business model for one that we're being really a little bit too custom, a little bit too bespoke for everyone, to more of a SaaS platform that more can have access to and more can benefit from. And that really means doing a lot more marketing and getting the word out there and communicating who we are and what we can do to those audiences. And so the company was able to raise a round of funding, and that enabled us to invest heavily in marketing and sales. Interesting.
So very sales driven prior?
Yeah, I'd argue still is and still should be.
But now marketing is taking on a much bigger portion of that lift.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. I think that there's a whole lot of smart people here, and some marketers that are listening to the show might agree that it's wonderful when you're blessed with working with really smart people. Unfortunately, as we know, everyone's a marketer, and so sometimes everyone thinks that they can do marketing. And to the credit of the leadership at Revenue Analytics, they decided to say, you know what, this isn't really what we do, and let's look outside and bring a leader in to build up a team for us.
Starting as a one-man band, as you put it, and having the opportunity to grow a nice little team in a short period of time. On one hand, that sounds like a dream scenario for a VP marketing. You get to structure the org and hire the people that you want. On the other hand, everybody's new. there's no legacy and institutional knowledge there. I mean, is that a dream scenario for a leader, or is that a nightmare, or is it somewhere in between?
Yes. No, it's there's honestly, if I had to pick one way or the other, I think this is certainly the way to go. I think the difficult part for us is that our hiring process is really fairly difficult. If I'm being totally honest, it's very, very few folks that get through to the end. We affectionately call it the gauntlet when people come here to the in-person interview. It's not easy, right? And so we're really looking for the best of the best. And so as such, if you bring someone in during the interview process that's not really at the top of their game, people are going to ask, hey, why are we spending cycles on this when you could be doing something else? And so to that end, it was really difficult finding really exceptional marketing folks. And it's not to say that there aren't a lot out there, but not everyone was just the right fit for our organization. And so when you do find that candidate, you're just like, oh, yeehaw, this is it. This is the person, right? And I had that moment, honestly, with every single person on the team where I just knew, and you can look through I guess you can't look through my recruiting notes, but if you were to look through my recruiting notes, you'll see every one of them. It's like, yep, we found him. This is the person. And I couldn't be happier with the exceptional team that we've developed.
When a new VP sales joins an organization, they very often bring in some of the top performers that they've worked with in the past. Did you do that with marketers, or did you start building a team from scratch?
It's funny. I definitely did network with a couple of friends that I've trusted and peers that I've worked with before. But candidly, I had a little bit of a difficulty with peers, knowing it would have been a different relationship where now this person would be reporting up to me. And after a couple of conversations, it was just like, I didn't know if that would fly. And in many cases, I just didn't want to potentially sacrifice the relationship for the potential business relationship. And for what we're doing here, we really needed some big hitters. And so we brought in, frankly, again, both our director of marketing and director of marketing communications and director of product marketing were VPs in their own right other places, and are two of the most exceptional marketers I've been around. I can't imagine not having them on the team today. Being able to find people like that, I think, was something I couldn't have found just going through my network with people I'd worked through before, because I think you would have fallen into, hey, this is how we've always done things, where at Revenue Analytics, we had to figure out and we still are, how to do a whole bunch of things the new way.
Did you have a plan right from the beginning of what this 8-person team would look like, what all the roles would be, and what the various levels of ownership of different functions would be? And I mean, were you able to draw that out 6, 8, 10 months ago and then go fill those roles? Or has your thinking and the resulting structure evolved as you've gone down this road?
A little bit of both, but the majority of it was planned out, and I had the luxury of hitting up some really talented people I know, and some of the folks that we work with at Serious Decisions were able to weigh in and kind of gut check what we had planned. I think the only real significant difference is that we originally had 2 product marketing managers earmarked to report up to the director of product marketing. We have changed those roles to content marketing managers, but that's frankly the only wrinkle in the plan so far.
So what are the key areas? You've got product marketing, you've got content, and what are some of the other areas?
So director of Marcom for us owns brand, as well as kind of global messaging, both internally, that's PR, that's social. I know that you often ask about content, and so product marketing for us owns content, as well as a lot of the strategy behind demand gen. We also have a marketing operations lead, Alex, who is fantastic, who spreads among everyone, right? Because he's dealing with lots of different tools and systems that aren't just specific to any one discipline. And then we have, I can go through the roster, but I doubt that's what you want me to do. But those are the key areas.
Okay. And have you firmed up? I'm thinking about 8 people, all relatively new in their roles, all wanting to make a big impact. Do you find that there are internal debates within your team about things like who owns content, who owns the website, who gets the larger share of the budget? I mean, it seems like in a team that perhaps evolved over years, there would be more clear rules of engagement. This is all a fresh team finding their way. Are you in the midst of a bunch of fleshing that stuff out, or has it come together in a pretty orderly way?
If you would ask me in my 20s, what do you recruit for? I would have said that the smartest person in the room. In my 30s, I probably would have said you find the person who has the most experience. A lot of people hear the word culture today and kind of gag a little bit because it feels like it's overused quite a bit. But that's the number one thing we hire for now at Revenue Analytics is culture. And the team that we have in marketing is built with the understanding that we are never judged individually. We just aren't. And marketing, and this is something that I think is so amazing, is you see these marketing folks trying to clamor for fame or budget or whatever it is, and we are never judged individually, right? If someone fat figures a post on social, they're not going to say, "Oh, well, Joe screwed up." No, marketing screwed up. Oh, well, there's an awesome new logo. Oh, it's Susie's logo. No, it's marketing's logo, right? And so our team very much buys into the fact that we will always be judged collectively. And as such, we behave that way. We have each other's backs. We are very not concerned at all at who gets what share of what credit or what budget. We operate as a group and wonderfully successful so far.
I know you guys have a pretty long sales cycle and large deal sizes. How do you measure success? I'm sure that ultimately contributing to revenue is what it all boils down to. But when revenue takes a long time to come in, how do you measure success along the way?
That's a great question. And I think that kind of leads into one of our bigger challenges as pivoting from what was kind of a hybrid model of software and business services to one that's more purely SaaS. And so our metrics today that we're going to kill, by the way, for this year are MQLs and SALs, right? And then percentage of those that are going to close. Obviously, it's just baked into most marketers' budgets. But I feel really strongly that as we enter into the next year, it needs to be more and more about percentage of revenue, right? At the end of the day, MQLs can't buy a cup of coffee, right? You need things to close. You need things to actually generate money where you can point to the scoreboard and say, we had a hand in closing that deal. And it's not going to be very often that we can say it's just us, but rather, hey, it's going to be attribution. It's marketing touched this. We either brought the lead in or we were, essential in pipeline acceleration. We can see how they're interacting with our content or whatever it is. And so as we head to 2020, we'll know that it's demos booked will be certainly something we're judged on, but percentage of revenue impact, I think, is probably the most fair thing for any marketer to be judged by.
A lot of SaaS companies, I would argue, over-rotate on opportunity sourcing and under-emphasize the impact of pipeline acceleration and deal size augmentation and win rate augmentation. You mentioned that is an area you guys are focusing. How do you think about marketing's ability to impact deals that are already in flight?
I think that you hear a lot about still demand gen and even more now about having customer events and employee advocacy. You don't hear a whole lot about marketing pulling deals through and pipeline acceleration. And it feels like that's such an essential part of what we should be doing. I think this is frankly a lot to do with, you hear about the sales and marketing age-old battle of people not getting over well together. It's like, well, how would you feel if someone just came to your door and dropped something there and walked away and said, well, it's now all your job? That's not the way we work, right? I mean, it's all on all of us to get these deals across the finish line. And so once you've MQL'd something or got a demo or whatever, that's the first part of the journey, right? And by all means, high five and be excited about it. But what content have we developed? What plans are in place? What touch points is marketing going to use to pull that deal through or to empower that person to take it to the buying group? What is it that we're doing to make it easy on them to build up that deal and close the deal?
Once that opportunity is in play, are you working entirely through the account executive who owns this deal, sort of with a sales enablement hat on, or are you continuing to market to that account?
I like to defer to the sales rep and we will interact how they would like us to interact. So sometimes you have a better relationship than we do. Other times you're not quite sure why this account is spiking and you just kind of want us to keep on doing what we're doing. But we're large enough that we have more than a few customers, but we're not so large that we still can't take a minute to look at every account. And so we still do that. And as we have folks that come across the line, we look at them and say, who's involved? Who do we think's in the buying group and how could we help move it along? And then if we have a resource in play, great. If not, we'll build one and something that we could potentially use in the future.
And would you characterize what you're doing as ABM or as something other than that?
I think we're just dipping our toe in ABM, and I don't mean that from we're scared of it point of view, but rather you have to have your house in order first, right? Like our core identity of who we are, having base level of content. Like you can't customize something that doesn't exist yet, right? We can't just do nothing but create one-offs for everyone and not have that good base of demand gen in place. And it feels like we're getting to the point where we can now start doing more kind of one-to-one ABM, which is really what I think ABM is. I know ABM is a very hot topic and everyone has their own 2 cents about it. But to me, ABM is account-based marketing, not accounts-based marketing. You're actually going at that one-to-one. Jokingly you said earlier, the one to many feels kind of like just base level marketing. If you're not doing that, you should probably get out of the game because you're giving the rest of us a really bad name, right? Because, if you're shouting into the ether about products and not at least getting, segment specific, then try a little harder, right? Actually put some effort into what we're doing. And so we're starting to that point where we have enough bandwidth to do some individual account-based events and putting some resources behind that. We're excited to do a lot more of that in 2020.
You work for, I don't know if you characterize it as a family-led firm, but the chairman, the CEO, and the president are all related. I notice when I am perusing the leadership board on your website. Tell us a little bit about that. And does that create any interesting challenges for a leader such as yourself coming in when there's that perhaps a strong family-based power base at the top?
Steve, when I first got out of school, I worked for a family business and learned I never wanted to work for a family business again because you saw the business decisions that were made out of spite or emotion because one brother didn't like the other. And the very first question I asked here during the interview process was like, "Hey, man, shoot to me straight. What's going on there? What is this like?" Most people look at our page and they see Bob Cross, who's the chairman, and they see Zach, who is our president, and see Dax, who is our CEO, and make the assumption, as I did, that Bob started the company and brought his 2 sons along to help run it. The truth is that's not the case. Zach actually founded the company, was working for a revenue management company at the time doing consulting, and saw these guys don't know what they're doing with software at all. Dax was actually a fairly prominent lawyer here in Atlanta. And Zach recruited him out of a law firm. And if you know any lawyers, getting a lawyer to not be a lawyer is one of the most amazing achievements ever because they love being a lawyer, right? So, and then Bob was actually retired and they got Bob out of retirement to help the company off the ground and give us some leadership early on. But these are 2 of the hardest working folks. Bob's in here a couple times a week, but Dax and Zach don't really have to work if we're being honest. And they're 2 of the hardest working people in the company. They're here the earliest, they're here the latest, they travel the most. They have a passion for the business that's palpable, that's contagious. And you wouldn't, outside the fact they're both gigantic people, like they're both like 6'5" or something, you'd never know that they were related. And they are an absolute pleasure to work for.
So your advice to other leaders considering an opportunity at a firm that does have family at the top is don't run away, but ask questions.
Yeah, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Meet the folks that are in play. And Zach, I honestly, and this is not lip service, couldn't ask for someone better to work with. He's been the best boss I've ever had, and I almost walked away just because I was scared about the family thing.
You spoke at an event recently, and the topic was customer centricity. Now, that's potentially a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. Where are you coming from when you speak about customer centricity?
Sure. So I think there's lots of things that are involved with customer centricity, and I really did enjoy giving that topic because it's something I get passionate about. We are inundated with so many things on a day-to-day basis, right? We have phone calls and emails. At this point, even direct mail is taking off, right? And to not put the effort into it, to at least make it either educational or entertaining for someone just seems criminal at this point. Like there's just so much that's out there. And if you're really being customer centric, you're making something easier for them. You are making their lives better. And if that's not with you, if that's not with your company, if that's not with the products you have today, that's okay. But you have to let them go on their way. You have to point them in a direction that can be helpful for them. I think one of the age-old things that we see the most of is when we're looking to reboot the website. And this is honestly something we were personally guilty of prior to our last reboot, which was, this is our solutions page, right? Here are our solutions. Can you think of anything you really think about that's more obnoxious than that? Right? Hey, step into my showroom and figure out which one of my things you should buy to solve your problem, right? I mean, how about we go to my problems? And for us, it was very difficult to find, kind of water cooler talk to put that into, but that's what we did now. And we try to really boil it down to what are the things that we are truly solving for, right? What are the things that people are actually saying, this is my pain point, and we can actually solve for that instead of trying to put them through the paces of perusing dozens of solutions to potentially find one that might fit them. That's pretty self-serving, right? And so why don't we spin it around and put a lot more effort and time and focus and thought into how do we make it easiest for them to interact with us?
Noticed that your website is extremely industry centric. I mean, there's just no other way of navigating your site. It's what industry are you in? And that's obviously, I guess, a manifestation of customer centricity, right? You're not asking me to determine which solution may work. You're asking me, who am I? And then you're going to tell me what works. Is that marketing, air quotes, meaning that your solution is essentially the same across all these different industries and you're just kind of gift wrapping it in different ways to make it easy for people to buy? Or is your solution actually really fundamentally different for manufacturers versus hospitality versus retailers, what have you?
Yeah, so that's a really fair question. And the unfortunate answer is that while the base problems might be, if you drill down to the lowest common denominator, similar on many aspects, the solutions themselves are very different. And moreover, they believe them to be fundamentally different. And so what was very difficult for us on our previous site is that we would have like all of our solutions out there and people would be confused at how could we be, I think one of the things that you'll see on our site, Steve, we price about half of the hotel rooms in all of North America. Well, how can we know that and also be really good at cruise or be really good at media? And being able to kind of separate that traffic into those swim lanes where we can now speak on a very industry specific level about their actual problems, and then being able to map our solutions, which do tend to be fairly vertically specific, we've actually gotten positive feedback, directly feedback from customers, which is always that rare thing that we as marketers, like, yay, someone out there is actually looking at our stuff, and that's fantastic. So it's been really well received. That's been nice.
I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I'm a big believer in the idea of buyer enablement being more important than sales enablement, meaning don't just help your sales guys sell, help the buyer understand, help the buyer navigate, and help the buyer choose. And it seems to me that you're doing that because right away I'm going into my swim lane, as you said, and then you can speak directly to me. You can use the vernacular of my industry. You can use the case studies and other things that are directly related to me. It seems you are enabling me as a buyer to more quickly determine if you're solving a problem that I suffer from, rather than me having to go through a solutions hierarchy and try to match my pain to your solution. So I totally get the approach there. Is there more? What else is involved in customer centricity other than that sort of making it easy for the buyer to solve their problem?
Sure. Yeah. And for a moment, let's quickly touch on buyer enablement. If you have not coined that phrase, I will. I'll give you a solid 15 minutes after this call to somehow coin that phrase online. But that's really what it is. It's buyer enablement. I think that's really very, very well put. I think one of the other slides that took people a moment to kind of come to grips with at the talk most recently was talking about sites like G2 and Capterra and similar comparison sites. Understanding that there's a fair amount of companies out there, frankly, Revenue Analytics was one of them, that didn't want to even participate and have their name out there, didn't even want to claim the listing and say, that's not really us, you have us in the wrong listing, and you don't even have the right area for us, so we're just going to abstain. Here's the problem. Your potential customers are going there. And if they're not going there, they're going to a different review site, or they're going to a different influencer online, or if they're going somewhere else to get that information. And if you are not making it a priority to define who you are, what you're offering, and in as many places as possible, then that's not being buyer centric either, because you're forcing them to do more work. You're forcing them to incur learning costs, which we know people just loathe. Right. And so people are going to oftentimes go the least path of least resistance. And so if you're a software company that does ERP solutions and you're not there, or if you're not in any one of these easy to find comparison sites, they're going to make the assumption, I'm guessing, that, hey, either you're not big enough to matter, or you don't care enough about me and my business to actually, put the information out there. And so again, we were actually guilty of that, I think, very recently. And so we've said, you know what, we really have to make sure that we get this out there, because people are going to review sites and thought leaders and social folks to find this information out. And if we're not actively helping them find it, then we'll either be dismissed, or they'll likely find the wrong answer to their question.
That leads directly into one of the most important topics, I think, and one of my favorite topics is the role of brand in B2B. And I think this is a highly contentious issue because B2B has traditionally been very data-driven, very, very measurable, and sometimes a consequence of that is a neglect or an underinvestment in brand, because brand is hard to measure. How much do you personally, and how much does your firm think about building the revenue analytics brand? And is that in tension sometimes with building measurable demand gen outcomes like MQLs and SQLs and opportunities and so forth?
Yeah, it's interesting that it is an interesting topic. And in this age where we do like to measure everything and say that everything is data-driven marketing, unless you're a gigantic company that's spending billions of dollars on advertising and has, focus groups set up on the reg to be able to see where that recognition is, it gets pretty hard for us to, as marketers, really see, hey, is that money well spent? For me, it's something that I absolutely do believe in. Insofar as that was one of the first people on that organizational tree we spoke about earlier. And Kate Madden-Jones is the rock star that we were able to hire for that role, someone who's built up several brands, who's repositioned companies in the past. And when you really think about brand, the way I like to think about brand is that is the commonality that buyers look to as they interact with your content and your people, right? Once they have that first interaction with an email or a PDF or a webinar or whatever it is, that's one point. But as soon as there's another point that's involved, that is now your brand. That's who you are, is that accumulation of experiences from either what they're researching on, what they're interacting with, who they're talking to. That is your brand. Brand is no different than any other marketing activity in that it's really classical conditioning, right? Every time that we are interacting with a piece of content or a sales rep or an advertisement, you are continuously educating the audience on what your brand is and how easy you are to do business with, or how difficult you are, whether or not you're providing value, if you're going to be someone who cares about the actual customer. All of those things, I think, are communicated on an ongoing basis to someone. And that's really brand for me, is that accumulation of all of those different experiences into one.
Before I let you go, Michael, question for you about career growth within marketing. I think a lot of our listeners aspire to a role like yours, and that's a tough road. And there's a lot of different paths to get there and a lot of different areas you could focus. What advice do you have for up and coming marketers, how they can not only get to the VP marketing role, but really thrive once they're there?
It's a great question, and actually, I heard your first one with Justin from Sixter. I think this is a great question. It allows us to be a little bit introspective and say, geez, if I was back in the day, what advice would I give myself, right? How would I provide information to someone who's coming up? So I think first and foremost, you really have to be passionate about your craft. You really have to invest in yourself and invest in getting yourself better. So that means reading books, going to conferences, thinking about it outside of office hours. And if marketing isn't your passion, that's totally cool. But you find something else that is, right? Find something else that you can be passionate about, that you can really drive towards. And I think the litmus test that I often give to folks I interview is, do you find yourself at dinner parties starting to talk about that, right? Is that it's just part of who you are. It's part of your DNA. And I encourage those marketers that have that to continue to follow that passion. The number two thing I would say is not getting caught up in the title. I know for me, part of it was just kind of shaped by my background. I was at LoJack, and none people actually knew about the company LoJack. I was like number 2 person there as an intern, and the boss, the highest marketer, was this lady, Donna, who was the director of marketing. So in my head, I built up director of marketing as like the end all be all title for marketing. And I chased that title for so many years and gnashed my teeth, wondering why it hadn't been given to me. And the truth is that titles really don't matter a whole lot. The ability for you to have an impact is what really matters. And so if you get focused on making that impact, the titles will follow. Like people will figure out, hey, you're someone who's passionate, who's driven, who's going to make things happen. And then they're going to want to put you in a position to have as much impact as possible. And then last but not least, one of the most impactful things I've had in my career that happened to me was that I took a sales job out of undergrad. And it let me understand how truly difficult sales is. And once you've walked, a mile in the salesman's shoes, you really have a different level of appreciation and understanding for what they go through, and hearing no 10,000 times a day and having to strap the boots on with a smile on your face the next day. It's not easy. It's really not. And so make sure that you have those conversations with your sales leader. Walk with them. Take an opportunity to go out in the field with them, see what they're going through. So you can really understand what it is that they're facing every day, and you can align with them. Once you have that close alignment with sales, you'll be able to earn their respect. You'll get better feedback from them, which will definitely make you a better marketer.
I love it. Fantastic advice. Thank you so much. This has been Michael McCunney. He's VP Marketing at Revenue Analytics. Michael, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. I think you've shared a whole lot of great insight, and your passion for marketing is undeniable. So thanks again so much.
Steve, thank you so much. Keep on making these great episodes.
Thanks for listening to the VP Marketing Show. We hope you'll join us next time.